What's up, Internet? You're tuning in episode 152 of Nintendo Noise, Flipscreen Games' weekly Nintendo podcast. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined today by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Steven Radford.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Steve. Welcome back.
Yeah, and welcome back to you, Pete. I wasn't on that last week's episode. All about Pokemon, right?
Yeah, all about Pokemon. We did a 151, the original 151 bracket in honor of episode 151, and it was a really good time. If
Mm.
you guys haven't checked that one out, make sure you go check it out. Sierra and I had a lot of fun, and I think we're going to be doing a rollout of some shorts like broken out from it, so you can catch the highlights and then check out the full episode if you want. But I would definitely go give that one a listen if you haven't. It was a good time.
Now, I heard that you missed out the OG Growlithe. Is that true?
I don't think that is true, actually. Like, I saw in the Discord, it's like, oh, I think it was Pilkey was like, you missed my boy Growlithe. But I remember Sierra being like, you're really gonna vote out this little baby, and I was like, no, I don't think I can. So I feel like I thought we did, and maybe maybe Pilkey just missed it, but I don't know. Who's to say?
Yeah, Growlithe's one of my favorites, and Snorlax, obviously. So yeah, people have
Yeah.
to watch to see how everyone fared, I
That's the
guess.
fun thing with brackets, man, right? It's like you don't know where things are gonna get seeded. So Pokemon you really like get eliminated early sometimes.
Yeah, I know. It's so scary when that happens. Or you have two that are so awful, and you don't know which of the most awful to get rid of.
Yeah. So that I never have trouble. I could always make a decision, if it's only when I really like both options where it's like, okay,
Yeah.
now if it's like a real Sophie's choice kind of moment, right?
I don't know. Some of the brackets, like, if it was like a bracket of like Elon Musk versus Donald Trump, who do I get rid of? I just really don't know. Like, terrible. It's a terrible choice.
It's a wet pillow fight to last place, as my friend Billy would put it. So that's not what we're here to talk about today, though. We're going to talk about the slew of Nintendo Switch 2 rumors that have come out this week. The one that kind of kicked this off for us was as we were sitting down to record today. Our good friend and former full-time co-host, still co-host in my heart, Chewy Plays sent us a tweet from Pink Fury on Twitter, who had a kind of like roundup of a couple of the rumors that have been circling the last few days, last week or so. And the kind of renewed interest kicked off because Chris Dring over on the oh, I'm sorry, what's the
Game industry.
gamesindustry.biz
Yeah.
podcast. He was talking about some of the rumors that he's heard, and he specifically said this. No developer I've spoken to expects it to launch in this financial year. In fact, they've been told not to expect it. I'm sorry. Yeah, in fact, they've been told not to expect it in this financial year. A bunch of people I spoke to hope it's out in April, May time. So I think,
Which is exactly what we spoke about, like, when we did our predictions as to when we thought the Switch 2 would come out, because
yeah,
I said, like, I don't think it's gonna come out this financial year, because I think you'd said maybe
I was
March,
thinking
right?
around like, yeah, March would make sense again. And then, yeah, you and Sierra convinced me that
It's like,
April.
no, it's gonna be in the next financial year, otherwise, I think it would have been in their forecast, and there's nothing
Yeah.
in there to kinda indicate that it's launching, so I do think April, May is probably the right time for it to launch if they're planning on having a big launch year next year.
I did think it was interesting though, right? Because again, it's a bunch of people I spoke to hope it's out in April, May. So that leads me to think it might even be later, which is
Possibly, but then there's some other rumors this week about the fact that there may be a reveal in October or November. If it's
right.
not April, May, why would you reveal it before Christmas? That seems like a really strange thing to do. I think if you're not releasing it in spring, you probably announce it in the spring, release it in the summer.
Yeah, I think that would make sense. So I just wanted to lead with Chris's comments because obviously Chris String is uh one of those voices that usually when he says something, it's like, okay, like that carries a little bit more weight to me, right? The fact that he's speaking to people who are actively working with Nintendo to get software out on this device, right? Like, I think holds a little bit of water, right? Whereas some of these other rumors, that like I pointed out, Pink Fury is the person who kind of summarized the recent rumor mill, as they put it. I wanted to just bring these up and kind of throw them at you and see how you're feeling. Because I think to your point, you thought April, May made a ton of sense. So I think, we're on the same page with with that bit of it. But I think some of these other things are a little bit more um
There's only really one of them I would say is a little bit wild to me, and we'll get to that one
one of them is
last.
controversial. The other ones are right, the kind of things that you normally see people prognosticate about, and then it's just a matter of do you think it's true or not, right?
Yeah.
So I thought it would be fun to just kind of pick through this like breakdown and see what you think is going to stick. So first one is alleged Nintendo Direct this month after Gamescom.
I could see it happening. I think we need to know what their kind of holiday lineup is going to look like. Don't think we really have any indicator that they've got a big holiday game yet. I could see that there's something there. Maybe there's some new special edition consoles. Maybe there's something they're trying. It feels like this is the time to have a bit of a clear out of parts of the parts bin that you've
Yeah, like
got.
one last big swing.
Yeah, and I was thinking maybe because I know you've been thinking about it, especially as we were discussing in the episode a couple of weeks ago about the price point of the Switch 2. Maybe this is the time we see a price cut for the Switch, and that drives up potential holiday sales of like people who potentially haven't bit on the OLED model yet. Well, how do we get rid of the last units that we've got? Let's reduce the price by like $50 or whatever, and people maybe will be willing to upgrade, even though the Switch 2 is on the horizon and Nintendo's even acknowledged that there will be a reveal in this financial year. I think that could potentially encourage people. But I think a direct it makes sense. I mean, we usually have one in the fall, don't we?
Yeah, I think that this is one that like it probably makes sense, right? Like whether or not how close or not it falls towards Gamescom is I think kind of like up for debate, I guess. But aside from that, I would say, yeah, you're probably right. We usually get a fall direct. I think we know that the reveal of this console has to come sooner or later, right? So the idea that maybe you do want to reveal it, I don't know though. I think even this month is too soon.
Not to reveal it, but I think a price
Oh,
cut,
for
like
the price cut, right, right, right. Sorry, excuse me.
because we've got like
That does
Black
make sense to me.
Friday coming up. There's like
Yeah,
some of the bigger games coming out like later this year.
yeah, and I think like we've made the point before that like this is the first year that Nintendo Switch sales have slowed down.
Yeah, drop
It's
the
been
price. Give us some more special editions. I would be surprised if we don't get a Zelda Switch Lite
well, there is one
theme.
already.
Oh,
Don't
there is?
forget. They
Okay,
did they did
yeah.
reveal that, yeah, for Zelda. So that'll be another one to move units. And I think, yeah, like to your point, like there are obviously types of consumer that would not want to buy a Nintendo Switch with the idea that there's another one looming on the horizon. But I don't think that there's much overlap between the people that are eager to take advantage of a price cut either. Right. Like,
Mhm,
I think the thing that you kind of secure if you do announce a price cut ahead of this holiday season is that, the families with like younger kids that have maybe now aged into getting their own console, right? But, they don't necessarily need the newest cutting edge thing, right? Because they're going to play whatever you put in front of them. Like those are the types of people that are going to buy a Switch Lite, that are going to buy a reduced cost Switch. That was the kind of the marketing play for like the 2DS, right? By the time that got its last price cut, it was like sub $100. So the idea that you could have like, even a not a huge price cut, right? But like you could have a pretty aggressive price cut and still be in good shape, right? So if they're at
mhm.
a point where, they want to, as you said, right, kind of start emptying out the stock of this older model and, kind of trying to get people to graduate over, yeah, why not, right? Like we've never had a price cut in 7 years on the market. That's literally unheard of. Why not now? If not now, then when, right? And I think having a attractive bundle with a solid price cut that's available for Christmas is like, yes, a slam dunk.
One other thing I think is worth considering is we don't have really any other incentive for NSO other than the deal they're giving out at the moment, which is you get 2 months for free if you resub for the year. I could see them revealing something new for NSO, whether that's like, you get the Splatoon 3 DLC included, like we got the Splatoon 2 DLC included. Maybe we get some new games come to the lineup. I could see something like that that would encourage people to resub. Then usually is an incentive around the fall time, which is when they initially revealed NSO to get people to resubscribe for the next year. And the expansion pass for NSO, you have to buy a year up front. You can't do it monthly. So I think people are kind of a little bit wary to go, well, do I want to sub for another whole year? They've not really given me much else for the expansion pass. I've probably played all the games that are on NSO at this point. Maybe I'm going to play through the adults only N64 games, but then after that, I'm kind of done.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess having a direct in late August, early September, right? Like could be an opportunity for you to roll out some incentive that you try to get people to stick around for, add a couple games to that 18 plus library, something like that. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I guess the only thing that's weird to me about the idea of it being within the next couple weeks is the idea that like, okay, so you're telling me we're gonna have a direct at the end of August or September, and then we're also gonna get a reveal between October and November,
I could
which
see that
is
because I don't think the reveal is going to be a direct. I think it's going to be a separate video. I think it's going to be, maybe they broadcast the fact that they're going to announce it, or maybe they just drop it on Twitter and YouTube, like they did with the OLED model, like they did
yeah.
with the 2DS
I don't think
XL.
it'll be like that because I think you kinda wanna own that day. I feel like it'll be more like what they did, I mean, this has kind of been the case for most of the last couple console reveals, right? Like, not even just from Nintendo, right? Where you have, like, a press conference, you know? Unless you're gonna reveal it at an event
Well,
where
Nintendo's wasn't really, and the initial reveal wasn't really a press conference. It was like, tune in next week for a sneak peek at the NX. They hadn't even named it the
right.
Switch, right?
So, maybe saying a press conference is the wrong word. I guess what I mean is, like, they created a beat, right? Like, that was
Yeah,
a
yeah. I think
marketing
you
beat,
have
and
like a
journalists
a
wrote
first
about
look.
the event. Next week is when it's gonna get revealed, so if you're somebody who is gonna watch that event, you get made aware of it. Then there's a week's worth of people like us what are they gonna show? What's the price gonna be? Blah, 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 and then you build up that event happens, you get more eyes on it than you would have before, then
And then it's
of
like the journalists get their hands on maybe with the units, there's more questions that are answered,
and
then there's a follow-up event with, like, what games are gonna be on the system.
And the bigger thing there, right, is even if it's the same event, even if it's here's the thing and here's the first couple games on it, right? Like, if you do that, right, like if it's an event that you announce and everything, that's how you get like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journals and all the organizations that write about video games as a business or as like how it's going to affect stocks, things like that, right? The more tech minded writers and business minded writers and things like that. That's how you're going to get them to write about it. They're not writing about, every Nintendo Direct, right? Unless it directly, no pun intended, influences stock value, right? When it's like
Yeah, like
they
we
showed
see
off Tears of the
Bloomberg
Kingdom and now their stock went up, right? Like that's when they're going to talk about it. But like a planned event, Nintendo is revealing their next console. Yeah, like that's something that's going to, have
Mhm.
major market ramifications, even to people that don't care about video games, just because that's how it is, right? Nintendo's a super influential brand. So I think that's kind of like I don't know. I guess that could be the truth. But when you're looking at this list of rumors, is that alleged Nintendo Direct this month after Gamescom, Indie World Direct the next month, then the Switch reveal in October to November, then the release date is in spring to summer. I don't know. It just feels like that feels like a lot of stuff in like a 3-month period. And I
Hmm.
just don't know. I don't know if I buy all of that, right? Like that seems like a little bit too much.
I don't necessarily buy all of it, and maybe some of it is, the Nintendo Direct happening after Gamescom is the Indie World Showcase. They could be one and the same,
That's
and
true. Yeah.
someone's heard that there's gonna be an indie showcase next month, someone's heard that there's a Direct after Gamescom. It could be kind of one and the same, but
Yeah.
it's one saying it's this month, one saying it's next month. There could just be a week in that, right? Or even a few days in that. The one's in September, one's in August.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that, but there are some bigger games coming up, and granted, we've already seen a deep dive on the new Zelda game. But
Right, like, if there was a direct a few weeks from now,
wouldn't
wouldn't
you
that be
hold
part of that
that?
direct?
Yeah.
Because if there was a direct happening in 2 weeks, that's still a full month before that game comes out. Why are they showing that information now?
Yeah, same with the Emio, they could have kept it for a direct, but I feel like maybe we could see some more stuff about, Mario and Luigi that's coming in November.
I mean, you also
Mayb
literally could see more about Zelda, right? It's not unheard of that for them to do that kind of thing. They would often do the thing of like, we're gonna show a little bit of it at this direct, and then it'll have its own direct tomorrow or later or whatever.
Mhm.
And like, it could just be a thing where like, well, we're getting the teaser now, and then there's like a longer, like bigger vertical slice of it that gets shown at the end of the month. And then that's, the kind of last big marketing beat leading up to the game. That could be the case. I don't know.
I kind of feel like it's accurate. I really do. I feel like we will get an indie world, and I do think we will get a Nintendo Direct. And I can't stop this feeling that we're gonna get the rest of the Prime trilogy ahead of Prime 4 next year.
You would
It
think
just
so, right?
it feels like that would be the perfect game to drop for the holiday season. It's like, Metroid Prime 4 is coming next year. Metroid Prime 1 Remastered's already available. Here's 2 and 3.
You
Whether
could
they're
do that. You could do that
digital
as
only.
a pack, right? Of like you get a Metroid, you get a Switch, maybe with a Metroid theme, with a boxed copy of
Mm,
Prime 1 and then a download code for 2 and 3.
yeah, I could easily see something like that. And I
Yeah,
do think that people are kind of crying out for it. It's just like, well, I want to play the rest of the Prime trilogy. Why did you only release number one when 1, 2, and 3 came as like a single title and back on the Wii? And I can understand that, but obviously they did put a lot of work into Metroid Prime 1, and seemingly a lot of that was groundwork for Metroid Prime 4. I do think that we'll probably just see 2 and 3. I mean, rumor was that that's been
maybe.
complete for years at this point, right?
Well, at least 1, right? Like, I mean, that rumor evolved and changed so many times, I'm not really sure anymore, right? Like, what was actually true and what
Mhm.
was just, stuff that was getting passed through the grapevine that, ended up being partly true, right? There was a Metroid Prime remaster, whatever. But it didn't come in the shape, form, or timeline that we expected ever. So
Yeah. And it's a good chance for them to clear out the entire Switch 1 pipeline ahead of the Switch 2 next year. Maybe they do have some other games that we don't know about. Maybe they finally brought over, say, Twilight Princess or Wind Waker from the Wii U, and we can finally
maybe,
play them.
yeah, I mean, like that's all stuff that could definitely happen and is all
It's
stuff that
also
you,
like the Earthbound anniversary year, right? Maybe we see
yeah,
something about that.
maybe. I don't know. I doubt it. I
There's
hope
a there's
so.
a lot of things that could be there. I could easily see there being a direct, even if it's a shorter one, even if it's like a 20-minute piece, and they or maybe it's even a deep dive onto a single game, and we just see about Zelda for the entire thing.
I will say to your point about them having another game up their sleeve, that is what happened last year, right? Like there was that like, okay, like here's our kind of like last direct of the year, and it's like, oh, Mario Wonder is coming out, and Mario
Yeah.
RPG remake is coming out, and there's a new WarioWare, and it's like, oh, okay, all of a sudden they have 3 games coming out in the next
Mhm.
quarter. So like it's certainly not unheard of. I guess it's just like it's so hard to wrap my head around where their head is at, right? Because it's like it does feel like you're getting to the point where it's like, okay, well, we're getting as far up to the line as we can, not talking about this thing while also being like it's definitely still coming soon. It's like, okay, like I mean, literally, right? Between now and the end of this financial quarter is 6 months, right? So it's like,
Yeah,
and
and they've told us
and
it's
change.
happening this financial year, right? They said that we will
Yeah.
be revealing the next Nintendo console this
Like
financial
it
year.
literally has to happen soon, but also I think it's just as likely that it doesn't get revealed in October, November, and it gets revealed in January or something.
I think that very much depends on the release date that they've got, and whether they think they can hit a spring summer release or whether that slips further back. I think if
Mm.
they hit that April May time that I think a lot of people are hoping for, by the sounds of what Chris String said, then I think a reveal in October, November makes sense. It gives you a decent amount of time, but you've also got the potential of a price cut for the original Switch, where if you're not that bothered about kind of the latest and greatest, and you're happy with the lineup of games, or maybe you still haven't got a Switch, or maybe you want to get one for your kid for Christmas, it's now a cheaper price point and it encourages you to do so. while still giving enough leeway and lead time for people to get excited and save up and be hyped for the new console that's coming in April and May. Or that completely goes out the window. We don't see a reveal until, say, March, and then it releases in August, September next year.
Yeah, I think that's the other chance is that like it's farther away than we want it to be, and that a reveal is going to come at the end of financial quarter of this financial year, and then we're who knows how far away from it, right? And
The
like,
difficulty I think they've got with that, though, is what do you then fill 2025 up with? Are there enough games in your pipeline for the current generation of Switch that you weren't going to release, say, a Switch 2 version for or a cross gen version for that you just put out next year? Because I feel like something like Metroid Prime 4 feels like that's a launch title for the next console to me.
definitely, definitely, yeah. And I guess that is an interesting question, but like, I don't know, dude. Like they've kept doing it, right? Like we had that question kind of last year, and then it was like, well, there's a new 2D Mario, and then it's like, what are they gonna do this year? New 2D Zelda, and it's like, well, shit, okay. It's like I don't know. Like they have other cards they can play, right? Like
Mhm.
we could get a Pokemon remake. It's like probably about time for one of those. It's like, um, there are little things that I mean, again, you brought up you could release Wind Waker again, you could release Twilight Princess again. They're not big, exciting, sexy announcements, but they're things that you could do to keep the
It keeps fans happy, and they're the people that really care, right? That
yeah,
they're the people who are dying for something else to play. Because I think anyone else is just like, "Oh, cool, it's a new Nintendo game," "Oh, Mario's out, I'll buy it when it comes out," you know? Whereas I think we're all kind of like, "What's next? What's next? What's next?" We're all anticipating and speculating about, "Is there gonna be a direct? Is there gonna be an indie world?" And, I still think when it comes to the indie world side of things, I could easily see Silksong being announced there. It's on my list of it's finally going to come out this year. We've seen it
yeah.
be rated across the world. It started in South Korea, slowly got rated everywhere else. It's shown up on
It
digital
was
stores on like
originally
Xbox.
revealed at a Nintendo Direct too, right? So
It was, and then it showed up at an Xbox event. I could easily see them bring it back to a Nintendo Direct
yeah,
and kind of reveal it is coming then, the date then, or maybe even shadow drop it then. That would be a huge win for them. Maybe we see like what Sierra wanted to see, like the Haunted Chocolatier from uh what's the guy's name? Eric
Concerned Ape.
Barone, but like Concerned Ape. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's true. I mean, and that those would be things that you could kind of like ride another wave through. And also, again, right, like a price cut. A price cut is a big part of that because if you cut the price, you don't really need new games, right? Like you can market the fact that the thing is cheaper, and like that's a marketing
Hey,
beat.
market it this cheaper, you pack in a game with it. We've seen the same Mario Kart bundle sell successfully every single year on Black Friday. And then last year they made the deal even sweeter. They bundled in NSO for a year.
Hmm.
I could easily see them doing something different this year. Maybe we get a couple of games included, for example, and they keep the price point the same because if they're going to reduce the cost of the console, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you like
Um,
include like an old game, like another old
yeah,
game.
yeah.
Like
It's
it's like,
like,
hey,
maybe we bring back like the player's choice, and it's just like, oh,
yeah,
here's some of the older titles. We're re-releasing them, putting them in new boxes. We're
that would
cutting the
actually be a
cost.
this that would be a really good time for this. Would be right now to do that and be like, you can get Breath of the Wild and you can get a new Switch and Breath of the Wild combined for less than the cost of
Yeah,
what the Switch has cost historically, right? That would
yeah,
be
exactly. And then if you like Breath of the Wild, pick up Tears of the Kingdom full whack.
right. Yeah, I think that makes I think that makes sense. That's a compelling argument, and I think it's unfortunately a compelling argument for the idea that they could delay because I do think that like you could probably get away with another 6 months. You know?
I think they could. I think you could probably get away with it being in August. I think anything later than that, it's like, man, come on, this thing's is long in the tooth. We're all waiting for what's next. We've been waiting for what's next for the last 2 3
I mean,
years.
you could do that. You could do it in the fall, right? Like that's when Xbox and PlayStation put them out last time. Like, I mean, you could, and it could still
I
be
see. I
the
feel like
hot
they want.
new thing for the holiday that year.
I think they want to replicate the success of the Switch, and the success of the Switch was in large part due to the fact that it launched early in the year and it had a year full of
I
games that
agree.
like high quality
Look
games.
at this year. If that thing had come out this year, earlier this year, it would be the only thing anyone was talking about.
Or even last year, Tears of a Kingdom and
Well, last year was different though, because there was other big stuff, right? Like we talked about how
yeah.
last year was a incredible heavy hitter in terms of like.
Yeah, whereas this year, I mean, me and Max spoke about it last week that, this year's just been bad news for the industry, like, with Bungie and stuff. And then um just a year of very, very slow releases. Like we've not really had any big blockbusters in this first half of the year. And then it's now
And then like the ones that have come out, some of them have not,
they've come out with a
lived up to
fizzle, yeah.
expectation, even if they're good, right? But it's like, it's like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was not the same moment that the first one was. And it's like
No.
when that's like the only big game that came out in the first quarter, it's like shit. Like
Well, it's that and Helldivers really are the only
that
two
was more of
two
like
big
that was
ones.
more of a like sleeper hit surprise
Yeah.
though, right? Like you didn't. I mean, some people did, but I don't think that many people were like, "That's going to be one of the biggest games of the year." And it's like,
Mhm.
I think that part of its success was probably that there wasn't a lot of other stuff going on. So if you got into it, it was really easy to be like, "Yeah, yeah, like this is what I'm playing. This is what I'm playing this year." It's the only thing all my friends are talking about, right? And it's like, yeah, makes sense. Or you're
Yeah.
catching up from stuff from last year. How many people were playing Baldur's Gate still? Shit like that.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. I mean, I think that's gonna be I really do think that's gonna be the struggle for them, though. If they do delay it, what's the reason for the delay? We've heard that maybe it's the software's not ready, and if the software's not ready, then fair enough, I think they need to push the console back, but if the software is ready and you're delaying it because you want the hardware to be ready and there to be enough consoles, you've then got a year potentially with no games coming out on the Switch, or because you probably want to save the cross-gen releases for when the Switch 2's out rather than
Yeah, but like
releasing them anyway.
could that work though? Right? Because you think about what you suggested yourself, right? Like we ended up getting way more releases this year than we thought we would. We ended up getting way more releases last year than we thought we would. And I think if they go into this year with the mentality of like we're going to be really light on new software, right? And maybe we get some new stuff on NSO, maybe we get, like I said, like a Pokemon remake, like low
Mhm.
stakes stuff that is like cool. It's out, you're going to buy it or you won't. Um and then the big thing that they're marketing is like, we are cutting the price of the Nintendo Switch for the first time ever. We're doing a classics line and re-releasing all these older games at $50 or at $40 or something like that. I think that's kind of enough, and not to like satiate you and me and the audience, the people like the highly activated player, but like they're already not really serving us, right? We're already like getting less games a year right now than we want because they're holding things closer to their chest. And we would want, more than we're getting. But also, we got a lot of things we did want. We got a remake of Thousand Year Door. That's been something people have been asking for since the beginning of the console. We got, the first game where we get to play Zelda the whole way through. That's something we've been asking for years. That's going to be out in a few weeks. Like, it's not like we got nothing this year. It's just, I feel like this feels to me similar to like, was it 2018 maybe the year I'm thinking of, where there was like Fire Emblem and Pokemon, and it's like, yeah, those are two big games, or like even Animal Crossing in 2020, but it's like if that's not your bag, then you're going to be like, what was for me this year? And it's like, yeah,
Mhm.
I mean that happens sometimes, but like last year it was like if there wasn't something for you last year, then maybe you're just not a big Nintendo person, right? Because it's like 2D Mario, sequel to Breath of the Wild, Mario RPG, like it's like there was a lot of stuff. Like there was set like there are games that came out on Switch last year that were exclusives that if they had come out any other year, they'd be a marquee title, and we forgot about them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I think that's what's crazy about even this year, right? There are games I think Nintendo's definitely putting out more of than the other of the big 3. Xbox is delaying games into
Xbox
2025.
has closed more studios than they put out games this year.
PlayStation's got nothing. They're laying off people like crazy. It's like, man, and yet we're potentially in the last year of the console's life cycle, and we're just getting game after game after game, and potentially even more with the rumor of another direct and a indie world. I do think,
Yeah, if they've even one game to announce at that, they're pretty much good, right?
yeah,
Like,
I
think about how many games have already come out this year.
yeah, it's crazy. And games that are scheduled to come out, they had that whole big direct, and then Emio came out of nowhere. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
here's
shit. I
here's
didn't even
another
think about that.
Famicom Detective Club game.
Yeah, right. So think about that, right? Between that, we had the Mario vs. Donkey Kong came out this year, right? There was
Mhm.
Luigi's Mansion 2, Princess Peach. We had or Princess Peach Showtime. Um, we have Zelda coming out. We have Detective Club coming out.
Mario and Luigi coming
Mario and
out.
Luigi. That's I think I'm even forgetting another game, but that's 6 games already. That's a lot. That's a lot of releases for 1
Super
year.
Mario Party Jamboree.
Is that this year too?
Yeah, it's out in
Yeah.
October.
That's like 7, 8 games. Like
I mean,
that's
that's one I could see a direct on. Super Mario Party
sure,
Jamboree, like,
sure.
that comes out in October, let's do a direct, September
Oh,
time.
NES World Champions, that's the other one that came out that I wasn't thinking of.
Mhm.
So yeah, like, that's a lot. That's, like, almost double digits in terms of releases this year, and they had a ton of releases out last year, so it's like, you know, I mean, yeah, it's like it's more double A stuff. It's maybe not Tears of the Kingdom, whatever, 3D Mario, but, like, it's not a small amount of software. So like the idea that they're just like, hey, we've put out like 30 games in the last 3 years, like maybe pump the brakes and do a massive price cut and do a like classics collection and knock down the price of a bunch of these Switch games that have never had a price cut or like are almost never on sale and be like, yeah, like let's eat shit for a year and like coast and officially make the Nintendo Switch the best selling console of all time. Ride that wave, and like just kind of like coast until it's time to not coast because like realistically what else do they need to do, right? Like it's like we talk all the time about how they're sitting on billions and billions of yen. They have a massive stockpile of cash. They're right on the cusp of getting a new generation going, which is obviously going to bring a lot of new attention. Like the business is thriving, right? they're
Yeah,
they're
theme parks and movies
movies,
and
all that
TV
shit.
shows,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like, dude, like they could make no money this year and still be fine,
I
right?
think
Like
I think wasn't it we read something like they can make no money for 15 years and they'd
and
still be fine.
be set,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, so what's the motivation, right? Like, fuck, they could even not drop the price and it would materially not affect their bottom line that much. But like if
No,
they
it wouldn't,
do,
but I really do think you're right about that. I really do think a price cut
I think
is
now's the
probably gonna
time
come. If you're gonna
when you have
reveal the
nothing else to
Switch
talk
2,
about.
I think if you're gonna reveal the Switch 2, you kind of have to. It's like, no, that really cannibalizes and eats into your holiday sales. If you know the next one's coming out next year, why would you bother buying one this year, you know?
A great reason is if it's $150,
Exactly, yeah.
right? Like it's like, yeah, okay, fuck, sure.
That's
Even
almost
even two
impulse
hundred
purchase at
dollars,
that point, yeah.
right? Like even $200 is a 33% price cut. Like that's pretty damn good. But yeah, you could do 150 and be a 50% price cut. Think about what a big marketing beat that is. Like every Amazon, Walmart, 50, 50 per, front page again, right? Like easy. And again, you're
Mhm.
you're squeezing blood from a stone. There's a lot less people to do that this time around, but like that's what you're doing at this point, right? Like you're scraping the bottom of the barrel before you're ready for the new show. And it's like, yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you do it now, right? If not now. And that's usually what motivates a price cut, right? It's like dwindling sales, market competition, like that's usually what motivates a
Which they've
price
not
cut.
had either. I mean, no one's in the handheld
No
space,
problem.
and there's and they've only this year seen slowing sales 7 years after the console's release.
So why not now, right? It's like, okay, sales have slowed. We've run out of games that we're willing to put out as Switch only games. Everything else that we have in the chamber, we're holding to be incentives for the next console. Yeah, I think why not, right? Why not push the price cut now? Why not do a player's choice and get momentum out of the insanely deep library that you've built on this thing over the last 8 years. There's so many games in their like library that have come out to critical acclaim, have sold well, but have not sold like Tears of the Kingdom well. And like just knock the yeah, like think about how many more copies of like Pikmin 4 you could sell if you knocked $10 off the price cut,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, shove the player's choice moniker on that, people might actually buy it.
Splatoon 3, right? You could probably sell another couple million, right? Of those kinds of games. And maybe not of every one of them, but like whatever, right? Like, why not? Why not now? And if you would then have that for all the people that go and jump on Switch 2 and then are like, I got a Switch 2, I want games to play. Cool. All the best games on Switch 1 are $10 cheaper and you never played them. Though all the ones you didn't play them now on the better hardware for less money. Right? Like it just makes sense. And we might, just be off base because frankly, to the point we just made, there's not a lot of pressure for on them right now to do anything aside from continuing to cash checks, right? Like every other console ever made would be killing for the level of sales are plateauing 8 years in. Oh no, right? Like it's like, yeah, like fucking A. But like how far do they want to push that is the question. And I think they know that they gotta kind of get ready to pass the baton, even though the thing is still making money hand over fist. It's like at some point you gotta do it. You gotta segment the audience. And for like the folks like us, the really hardcore people, like we're ready for a new toy, and I think like being able to maximize the absolute every dollar and cent out of the folks that are not that activated, but are still able, that will buy a Switch and will play Mario Kart or Animal Crossing or whatever. Yeah, right. Like you gotta swing for that right now. And in such a comfortable position, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you try to maximize not only the value of this console generation, but the point you made earlier, giving you literally as much lead time as you can to work out every kink on the Switch 2. Make sure that there's no Joy-Con drift waiting to be found out a few years later. That there's no everyone wants one and no one can get one problem. That there's no, oh my God, I love this thing. All I want to do is play games on it. Where's the next game? Right? Like those are all like what we just laid out right there is every problem that the Nintendo Switch had. And if they
And
have it,
marketing that they also had the problem with the Switch. I think they want an even bigger problem this time around because it's the same problem they had with the Wii U. It's how do we follow up on what is now our most successful console?
which I think is a perfect time to transition into the last rumor that we're going to discuss, which is that the Nintendo Switch 2 is a reverse Wii U. So
Yeah.
before we talk about that, because we will get a lot to say about that. That's an interesting one. Let me remind you that this episode of Nintendo Noise is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of August. They are, of course, Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valenz, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, aka Sobe, Steve Stompy, Susan Likes Cats and also Boobies, Ty the Dude, Voodoo Vic, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. Y'all the realest of the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. If you want to go check out our sister shows, the Flip Screen Games podcast and the Steam Deck podcast, if you want to get involved in the community, or if you just want to write in with your thoughts on what we're talking about this week, or suggest the main topic of your own, you can do all that and much, much more by heading over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you will find everywhere we are, all over the beautiful, disgusting internet. However you choose to get involved, thanks for tuning in. So, we have a rumor that's been making the rounds that there is a kind of reverse Wii U situation going on with the Switch 2, where essentially through a not dissimilar technology from like how like a Chromecast would work or something like that, that essentially you would be playing on your Nintendo Switch and you would have the ability to project a second image to the television and I guess use that as a second screen experience in some way.
Yeah, and I really do think there's legs in this rumor. Nvidia had obviously has this tech and had this tech since the Nvidia Shield with
Right.
Game Stream. We know they can do this. They've been able to do this for a
Over a
decade
decade?
at
Yeah.
this point. So I could easily see something like this being plausible. And I don't necessarily think it would be the best way to play. I think if you want to have it in like 4K, for example, you would need to dock it and run it on your TV. But if you are okay, having that second screen experience, maybe it's like how you played Splatoon on the Wii U, where you could view the map on the gamepad and you see the gameplay on the TV. Or say the initial concept for Breath of the Wild, where the inventory is always visible on the gamepad and I can tap to gather all my items together while I'm still moving around.
I think the most interesting thing about that for me is also like how it's a pretty flexible solution for some of the historical porting problems that we've discussed, right? Like one of the things that we talked about on a couple recent episodes is how you know, the I don't know if it's Gen Z technically, I guess. I don't know. I guess younger millennials or older Gen Z, right? Their touchstones for Nintendo nostalgia are like the DS, right? And the Wii. And obviously with the, Joy Cons, we've been able to bring a lot of Wii games forward with controls, no problem. But porting DS and 3DS titles has always been more involved, right? Because for some of them, like there was like the World Ends with You, the Square game, right? That was like they were able to just remake it and remove the features that required the second screen or adapt them in a way that um worked for a single display. But there's plenty of those games where that's just not possible. And also, it's a lot of work to do that, right? Like that's what they just did with Luigi's Mansion 2. That was a 3DS game. Now it's a Switch game. That takes a lot more work than just porting it, right? And upresing it and making slight adjustments and being able to just, you know, um, have the top screen on your TV and the bottom screen on your hands, the same way that it worked on Wii U, right? That was why DS and ports were so easy there. So I do,
No, and I could easily see that being the case, like for DS,
yeah,
but I do think they'll put the legwork in so there's a solution so you can play it when you're just handheld and you're out and about because that's what the Switch is known for. It's like take your home console anywhere you go with you. Like I think people will want to be able to play those games. But man, it would be so nice to see DS games come to NSO and I can just boot up my favorite version of Mario 64, which is the DS version, and I can just play it on the TV.
I think what you just said there is my question about this as like whether or not I think it's real. Because I think I think the points you're making are compelling, right? I think the idea of it being like plausible, right? It does seem plausible. It does seem like that's something that could make sense. And I do see the logic of like this is how you up the ante of what the Switch does is like, oh, it's the exact here. Like it could be a thing where like I can imagine the marketing beat of that, right? In the same way that they had that commercial of the dude playing Breath of the Wild and then he picks it up and leaves and it's like, oh, it just keeps going. I could see you doing the opposite of that, right? It's like Switch 2 and they show someone picking it up, putting it in the thing and it's like, ah, it's what
Mhm.
you know. And then you pick it up and then something gets displayed on the screen. And like my concern with that is that feels gimmicky to me in the same way that the Wii U did, and not the same level of like novel. This just makes sense that the Switch does because I think that there are like to the and I'm excited to hear your observations there. But aside from the obvious benefit of like backporting, right, and like being able to leverage two screens again, um, I feel like unless you make it something that has to be like present in every game, you're gonna run into that as a problem where it's like, so then what? Every game
Yeah.
needs to have two modes where I can play it handheld or docked on the TV or with the second screen experience. Like, I think there are plenty of examples of how you could make things specific to that, right? And that could be cool. And I'm certainly not discounting that. But I have to wonder if it doesn't reek a little bit of like that example they showed us of the Wii U, where it's like you could like be playing a board game with it, and and it's like, yeah, but did that never really materialize? It's like it's an interesting idea, but like, what is the actual gameplay application of that is deep enough and interesting enough that it's a good gimmick, and also not so fundamental that it gets in the way of the Switch being an untethered device? That's my concern.
What if it's not for that purpose? What if the purpose is rather than you playing a split screens game, you kind of cast as the second screen to the TV. Someone's got their controller hooked up. I'm playing on the couch with,
Yeah,
the pro controller while my friends playing with the Switch, and we're playing that way. And it potentially opens up other gameplay opportunities, right? Where it's like I want to see a screen that's private to me because it's impacting something that you're not meant to see, like,
right. Yeah.
like that, bomb game, right? Like, Keep Calm and Nobody Explodes, like, maybe it can
Totally.
open up avenues like that. I could see that there would be good applications for that, as well as it just being like, it's a second screen for you to view a map on, right? Because I think a lot of people never really saw the use case for the DS until we got one in our hands. It was like, well, why would I want a second screen? And it opened up additional opportunities for gameplay. I think there could be those additional modes. It could just be that you can view your inventory at all times. It could be that you can view the map on Mario Kart 9.
So just to push back a little bit, because I think I agree with what you're saying in principle, but I think the difference between something like the DS and this is that the DS is one of those like, why would we need this? And then it's like, well, I'll prove it to you because it's integral to the device. Right?
Yes.
Like there's no universe where you could make a game on the DS that doesn't take advantage of the bottom screen. That would be, that's something you could, I guess, choose to do. But there's no universe where that is not the display, right? Like no matter what, the display is two screens, even if what you're doing is basically putting like a placeholder there, right? Or you're using it just for menus or whatever. There's something on that screen. The idea that it's like, okay, well, how do you do this in such a way where it adds meaningful functionality, but I could also just not ever use it that way and it would be fine. That's, I guess, my question. Not to say that it's like impossible, but it's like I wonder if that doesn't end up just being something similar to like, when they were showing off like, what Rumble Pro or whatever, right? With like the ice cubes. And it's like, okay, well, like what's the act like? Is that anything that anyone actually takes advantage of, right? Or
No,
like,
but I feel like HT Rumble came a little bit too soon. PlayStation got the tech that actually would have felt great.
yeah.
When you're walking in Astro's playroom and you're walking on glass, and it feels like you're walking on glass. You're walking through sand. It feels like you're walking through sand. That's the kind of implementation with the haptics I think we'll see in the Switch too. It could even be just something as simple as, you want to cast something to your TV. Maybe you're watching Netflix on your Switch too. Maybe that's a big thing. Like we've finally got Netflix and you can watch it on your Switch too, and you can just cast it to your TV if you want to. And it's another way for you to do that. Or maybe you can't be bothered to get up from the couch to dock it to your TV and you want to cast it. And it could just be something as simple as that. If they've got the tech and it's there and Nvidia's given them access to it, maybe it's just a case that they want to open up that possibility. But I could easily see it having applications for split screen multiplayer. If I'm playing, say, GoldenEye, I always used to look when I was a kid at where my
Sure.
friend was, so I could find out where the hell they were and just go kill them.
Yeah, and I mean, who knows? Like, I guess maybe there's something to the idea that they have like data that shows that a lot of people play couch co-op or whatever, and it's like maybe they want to make something that appeals to that market. Um,
I,
yeah,
I would
because it's like I
imagine
said,
couch
it's
co-op's
not
a
like I
huge
can't
market.
think of applications, but it's like I'm trying to imagine I'm playing the sequel to Tears of the Kingdom, right? I'm playing the next Legend of Zelda game. It's like, what is the functionality there?
Maybe there isn't any functionality there, but maybe the functionality is in Mario Party where that's one of the
Yeah,
modes and that's like the mini game, and someone takes over the
yeah.
Switch and they're playing like on the mini game, and they can see something and everyone else is playing on the TV, and I'm like, working in secret so nobody
Yeah,
knows.
fair enough. Yeah, you make a good point. I think there's certainly ways that you could take advantage of it, and I guess I don't know. I guess that's the thing, right? Is like I think what was so novel about the Switch after the last couple iterations of Nintendo devices was that the gimmick was not a gameplay influencing gimmick. It was a this is a lifestyle thing, right? It's like
There
it's
were
it
some gameplay gimmicks though, like
yeah, but
the
I feel like
fucking IR sensor, which really only had one decent application, and that was for Ring Fit.
yeah, and even that was not that good. Um, yeah, I mean, like that's fair, right? Like that was just kind of a gimmick, and maybe that's what this is. Is like if it does exist, it's just something that it's like, look at this, it can do it, but it's like, yeah, but to what end? And it's like, well, that's for the developers to find out. And they're like, we don't want to, we're good, So who's to say? But so you think this is real?
Yeah, I think this is real. I do. I could easily see it existing. And I think, NVIDIA's tech is solid. Max uses it on the
Yeah,
daily to stream his upstairs PC to his living room. It uses NVIDIA's game stream as the back end. We know it's solid for that. Those are 4K games that he's playing with no latency. To stream across your couch from a Switch to a TV from dedicated hardware that's designed for it, I think is easy peasy.
hey, maybe you just don't need a dock anymore.
No, maybe you don't, and then maybe that
But it's like, what's the benefit of that? You still like you then you just need to charge it.
You do. I could see. I think the dock stays, but maybe it becomes like we spoke in
Or
when we were
ancillary?
talking about it.
Oh,
It's an optional extra, right? You can buy that if you want it. It might work with your current dock if you want the
yeah,
upgraded dock. That's an optional extra, and it's a way to keep the price down.
that's
You know,
something.
you want if you want the best experience, you got to buy the dock, but we'll include this little widget that you plug into your TV, and that will let you stream to the TV.
Okay, okay. I I'm interested in what you're saying. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that I buy it. I feel like this is one of those ones where, like, to your point, I could see this, right? If it does come to pass, I won't be like, "Oh, wow, total like, this seemed like total science fiction." But I guess I'm just like, I don't know. For a lot of these kinds of decisions, it comes down to a gut check for me, like a vibes check of like, can I envision this as a marketing beat? Can I envision this as like a selling point? And I just don't know that I see it because it's like, how do you explain that in a way that's interesting? And I guess the answer is by showing me a game like Wii Sports or something like that, where it's like you see it and you immediately understand. You're like, oh, okay, cool, that makes sense,
Yeah,
right?
I think
You
it's
know,
either a game or it is a reason not to have a dock, and that becomes the optional extra.
mm, yeah, maybe so. I don't know. It's interesting to me because it's like, isn't that what the Nintendo Switch is?
It is, but yeah, like, that's what the Nintendo Switch is, but is the Switch 2 that? I can still play it on my TV,
Is it
and I
even
can
the
still
Switch
take it
Two?
anywhere I want, and, like, now, it's a better experience because I don't have to take the Joy-Cons off constantly to play it on the TV. I can just cast it, and then I'm playing it on the TV, and maybe there are those additional features and additional modes where I can use the touchscreen to play maybe certain mini games or access menus, do things that I would wanna do with the touchscreen while also viewing it on the screen. Maybe I can cast the screen and cast it back and, like, switch between it.
Flip them,
There's
yeah, like you could on
yeah,
Wii U.
there's, like, a lot of things that you could potentially do with it, and I think it would be a compelling piece, and I'd like to see it. I would probably use it, and if it meant shaving $75 off the cost of a Switch 2, because I could potentially use my current dock, if I'm okay with 1080p, or it comes with something that allows me to cast it, then why not?
Mm, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. We'll leave it there for today. I'm interested in hearing what you guys think at home. Do you think this rumor has any weight? If so, are you like Steve, where you can kind of see the application for it, or are you maybe falling more on my side of the fence, where um it maybe feels like a Wii U esque gimmick of like we can do this, but it's like, but why, right? Because I think that was the difference, right, between the Wii and the Wii U. The Wii, it was like, oh, this is something new, and the Wii U was like, you guys like tablets, right? And
Yeah.
that's yeah, I guess I guess I worry about that a little bit. Not that like I think that if this is the thing that like means the device is DOA because you could just not ever use it in the same way that like there are developers that don't use PlayStation's controller, and it's like it's cool if you do, and if you don't, then whatever, that's fine too. That could just as easily be the thing, and it could be a thing that we see in a commercial and then it never comes up again. But I don't know. It does feel like a little bit like a bit of a hat on a hat, and that's
What
my
about
biggest fear for a successor to the Nintendo Switch is like trying to add bells and whistles rather than just being like it's more powerful.
I could agree with that, but what if it's even like a simple solution? So it's like you've got a Switch 2 and a dock, buy this, $35 accessory, plug it into your bedroom TV, plug it into your kids' TV. They can play it in their room and
And like
cast
you
it
could
to
just
their room,
cast it
and
anywhere from one
you can
dock.
just play it from anywhere then. And
That's
it's like,
interesting. That I could see. And I
um,
could see the value of that in like a multi Switch household of like, oh, instead of having a dock in every room, it's just a dongle that you plug in.
yeah, and I just pick which room I want to cast in the same way that in my house I have a bedroom TV and a living room TV, and I want to watch, YouTube on it. I select which TV I want to watch it on, and it shows up.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Something to think about. This is an interesting one. I really like this rumor, and I hope it's true.
I'm just excited to have something to talk about with it, honestly. Like I'm so like desperate for information, you know? I'm like, even if I don't like the idea, I'm like, give me it. I want to hear your weird ass ideas. Tell me. Let me judge it for 6 months and then be proven wrong. I really want to hear from you guys on this one. If you guys have thoughts about this rumor and whether or not you think it's real and what your personal feelings are about it, just on a gut check level, definitely write in and let us know. You can do that and much more by heading over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you'll find all the places we are all over the disgusting, beautiful internet. You'll find our sister shows, you'll find our Discord, you'll find our Patreon, all of which are great ways to get involved, show your support, and get some extra perks and goodies. However, you get involved, thank you oh so much for joining us here on another episode of Nintendo Noise. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Steve. We love you. Bye. Manic energy today, everybody.